Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me this week is Nishant Reddy, CEO and co-founder of A Golden State. Thank you very much for joining me today, Nishant.
Thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure.
Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. Nishant, I always like to start a little bit learning about the person and their connection to cannabis. What was it that brought you to this industry?
Yeah, I've definitely been a long time passionate user, right? I started my cannabis usage in, my freshman year of high school. Like most, that really started as a recreational consumer. Just enjoyed getting high and the euphoria that came with it. I ended up playing college sports, and so I wasn't really a big drinker. And post college, went on to work on Wall Street. And the culture obviously was one that was more anchored around drinking, especially in New York City. And as someone that was really just kind of in a high functioning, highly intellectual, work environment that was extremely demanding, it never really made sense to me that alcohol was such a big part of the culture, right? It really just wasn't complementary to the work that was being asked of you. And so my usage of cannabis really transformed from a recreational consumer to now one that was learning how to medicate themselves with the plant, understanding and researching terpenes, and really as a result, becoming better at my job. And what I mean by that is, managing my anxiety, managing my stress, helping me really kind of power through those 100-hour work weeks, So even though I was sleeping very little, I was getting sound sleep, right? And all of these things combined really allowed me to open up my eyes to the potential of this plant and to understand that, like, wow, there's a lot of people like myself who would really benefit from cannabis, who probably aren't thinking about it. This was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, who weren't thinking about it this way because obviously back then we were really only focusing on getting high, right? And again, the stigma was just exponentially more 10, 11 years ago when you talk about, traditional mainstream users, especially in corporate cultures. And so I connected all of these dots, and then I really saw a business opportunity. I saw how this could be branded, how this could grow, and then, really jumped headfirst into the medical market of California, operating dispensaries, pursuing licenses in Oregon. And that obviously catapulted, me into, a decade plus of being in the legalized cannabis industry.
What college sports did you play?
I played tennis and rugby.
Oh, wow. I suppose that you, with rugby and tennis, you need to use it for a little bit of, the aches and pains as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Aches and pains, inflammation, recovery, right? You're training hard. And then again, everything we talked about from a mental perspective, right? So this really is, for me, and I think for most, a 360 holistic plant that can really help you, treat or get control of a lot of different things that are affecting your body and your mind.
What was the initial jump like from the 100-hour work weeks on Wall Street into your new role in the cannabis industry?
I wish I could say the 100-hour work weeks actually decreased. I want to say they've continuously, consistently increased year over year. I think the hardest part was, excuse me, the fact that you're coming into an unstructured, nascent industry. And at that point, there was no industry, right? This was the medical market. There was talk about it eventually converting to a legalized recreational market, but you were really forging your path forward. You were taking a lot of entrepreneurial risk, figuring out problems, navigating the laws that were being written, and really trying to put together a business case and a business plan of what you were trying to pursue. So it was, in my mind, entrepreneurialism at its best. Like, you just had to figure this out. There was no roadmap. There weren't people who had done this before you. And you have to be scrappy, right? Especially 10, 11 years ago. It's not like you were going and raising outside capital and things like that. So it was bootstrap. It was scrappy. It was fast paced. It was unstructured. It was a lot of who could figure things out the best and then put together a business on the heels of that.
In your opinion, a lot of people started in the industry 10, 11 years ago because they were just drawn to the nature of cannabis. And they maybe fizzled out along the way. What was it that helped you succeed along those early days and through to today?
So I think it was, I had a very pragmatic business background. My background was private equity, it was investment banking. I had started other businesses that were successful prior to jumping into cannabis. I had a real estate development company. I had, you know, uh, some successful tech ventures. And so it wasn't my first time building a business. And I think that was a huge part of it. But then on top of that, it was coming from this very structured institutional finance background that allowed me to understand, what do investors want to see? Why does profitability matter? How do you structure a business for an exit? How do you structure a business appropriately, to navigate something like 280E tax, right? Back then, no one had a roadmap. So, my partner comes from a hedge fund background. So it allowed us to really mirror some of the stuff that we had done in other industries into this new industry. On top of that, you know, my entrance into cannabis was very, pragmatic as well, right? It started with operating dispensaries. It went on to establishing cultivations. Then it went on to building an infrastructure in California that focused primarily on cultivation, distribution, and brand. And so again, I learned every single one of these steps by doing them. And at the same time was leveraging my institutional finance background at the same time. And I think that really allowed us to put together the right pieces and put us on a pathway to find success.
We know about a Golden State. What else are you doing in cannabis right now?
hmm So the way we're structured is our parent company is actually Satya, and so Satya is basically a fully vertical cannabis investment company. We're owners operators. So in California, like you mentioned, a Golden State is one brand that we own and operate. We also have phases within our portfolio. We will be operating close to 100,000 square feet of indoor cultivations in California by the end of this year. We own and operate Vantage Point Distribution, which is a full service white glove boutique distribution company that, manages, seed to sale for all of our own brands, as well as offers services to third party brands as well. We do brand creation, product procurement, like again, seed to sale white glove service. In addition, we have our portfolio of brands that we talked about.
Mhm.
Um, as well as a little bit of retail in the portfolio. And then on a national scale, we're really in the process of focusing on bringing our expertise and our success in California to a national marketplace. A Golden State should be in every major market, and that's what I'm really focused on today.
What do you have to do in order to accomplish that national scale?
First and foremost, I think it's maintaining consistent success in California. I think a lot of our peers have grown, a little too fast for anyone's comfort. And I think they've lost their focus. And so I think for us, discipline is critical, right? We can't be the best at everything. We can't do everything well. And we don't have the strength to do everything well. And so, with that being said, establishing ourselves as leaders in California, which we are known for. We're known for our product quality, our genetics, our top shelf flower, our customer service, and all of the stuff that comes with being a premium operation. It's maintaining that, right? Because you can't suddenly open up in other states and let California slip backwards. And I think
Mhm.
that's where a lot of our peers have suffered. And so we're spending the most time and investment in not only further cementing ourselves as leaders in California, but expanding in California, market share, more grows, more brands, more genetics, and then really, really in a disciplined manner, choosing the markets we want to expand in and replicating our focus and our success in California. So if we're not manufacturers in California, then there's no reason we should be manufacturers in New Jersey, right? If we're known for premium cannabis and cultivations in California, then that is the part of the business that we should try to replicate as well as our brands in other states.
Is it just a mentality to stick with your strengths, or have you at times tried to dip into other areas and then realize that, maybe that wasn't in your wheelhouse?
No, we've been very disciplined. My partner Rob is considered to be one of the best cultivators, in the state, in the country. Simone, I told you, my other partner, has a very, strong background in regulatory finance, hedge fund structure. My background is business building, brand, private equity, investment banking. So when we put that all together, we found what our strengths were. And that's really what we stayed in our lane focusing on. Because again, if you think about the infrastructure that we have, it's already a lot, right?
Mhm.
Multiple brands, 100,000 square feet of indoor grows, retail, a distribution company. Those are completely independent businesses that have their own employees, their own SOPs, their own licensing, regulatory bodies, right? So it's a lot, right? And you're building these from scratch. I think that staying focused and playing to your strengths is absolutely critical to find success in this industry. And I think that we've seen the companies that have also found success, they have very similar business models. If you look at like a company like 710, they know what they do well and they do it exceptionally well, you
Mhm.
know? Um, and so I think that's a really important part of it. And I think, staying lean, staying nimble, focusing on profitability, not over raising capital, all equally important into what ultimately leads to the equation that I think ends up with success in this industry.
You said 100,000 square feet by the end of the year. Do you have new facilities coming online, or are there potential acquisitions?
No, so we don't do acquisitions for cultivations. We
Okay.
feel that we build them better than anyone else at a price point that's cheaper than anyone else. And that's a big part of why we've been able to be profitable, for the last 4 years. And I think that's a big part of what separates us from the industry, right? We haven't raised a lot of money. Um, you know, More or less around $10 million to date, which is pretty remarkable considering the scale we are at, right?
Right.
So having that level of profitability has allowed us to organically reinvest cash flows into the business and grow organically. And that forces you to be disciplined, right? Because you're automatically playing with limited resources. So every decision you make has to be a good decision. And I think that that's a critical part of building healthy, sustainable businesses. You don't owe your creditors or your debtors or your investors. You're building pragmatically, right? And when you have a little bit of extra cash flow, you go on and you scale. And so we've got two operational cultivations that total about 70,000 square feet. We have a third one that is 60 to 65% built right now. The only remaining stuff to complete is the interior, like mechanicals, panels, and tables and stuff. So we can knock that out, by Q1 next year. Power, water, all of that is ready to go. And so when that facility comes online, that will take us to the cumulative 100,000 in California.
How do you manage to build cultivation better and cheaper than anybody else?
So I think again, my background is real estate development, real estate finance. So I come with a very strong real estate background, right? I know construction, I know development, and my partner Rob knows cultivation, so we get in the weeds, no pun intended, but like we get in the weeds. We're not hiring third party consultants that are telling us how to build a grow or what kind of mechanics we need, and we're not overpaying. And I think that's a big part of what's happening in the industry is you have people that have never done this before building these behemoth commercial operations, but they've got to get third parties to tell them how to do it. So
Mhm.
already you kind of have a little bit of a conflict of interest because you've got people with a ton of money spending a ton of money. You've got people that are supposed to be managing that money to build cultivations. There's a lot of different ways that can get slippery and you can overspend. And at the end of the day, not really end up with the best product for the job you're trying to do. So we don't overbuild, right? We know what works. We know how to get profitable, and we don't really try to get any fancier than that.
Do you have the same mentality when it comes to specifying the equipment and the resources that go into the buildings?
Absolutely. I remember when we built our first cultivation, we were being pitched on these like complex cooler systems, water cooler towers and complex. And we were like, guys, we're in Redding, California. There's not even a cooler repairman for like 5 to 8 hours of where our cultivation is. So, what's going to happen when this thing fails at some point in the future? What are we going to do?
Mhm.
Like, so we're going to lose all those harvests because we can't find a repairman. Like, that's an insane thing to do. Yet people were building these complex structures and not thinking about very simple, commonsensical kind of like decisions, right? So we went with Dosatron. We knew it. We've been working with Dosatron for 15 years in the MRSA market. It works really well. It's not fancy. Everyone on our team knows how to fix and repair and install Dosatron machines. So we're completely self-sufficient. And if it doesn't, if it works, why mess with it, right? We're producing cannabis that's second to no one in the state. You know, we're getting the highest wholesale and retail prices. We're winning awards. Something we're doing is right, right? And so if we're able to build these facilities for cheaper, get them operational and profitable, and manage them, including maintenance in-house, that's a powerful place to be in. You know, that really allows you to get into your cogs and your profit margins and find efficiencies at every single touch point.
When you're seeing such success, do you find people that are trying to replicate your success, trying to poach some of your talent?
Yes and no. You know, I think we've built something really special and lean. You know, we're not the biggest company. We're not the most employees. We don't pride ourselves by saying we have a massive number of employees. I don't know if that's really a proper braggadocious point. You know, we have 2,000 employees. It's like, well, could you do the job with 700? You know, so yeah, so I think we've built a really special culture, and our team is really proud to be a part of this company, you know, and it shows. It shows when you walk the facilities, when you come to our HQ, people are happy, they're smiling, they use our products. They know what we're doing is really special, and they've also seen that the company is giving them tremendous opportunity and room for growth. You know, we promote from within, you know, and so yes, people always try to poach, but we've retained our talent because I think they confidently believe that the grass is not greener on the
Mm.
other side, right? Like, we're not perfect, we're growing. There's always going to be a hiccup here or there, but they believe in what we're doing and they want to continue to be a part of this.
How many employees do you have under that Satya umbrella?
As we round out this year, you know, it'll be right around, you know, probably 150 to 200.
Okay. I mean, that you're right. That is, you guys are doing an incredible scale. And really that has to be a lot of that has to be a credit to the talent that you have in house.
Absolutely. I will not for a second take away anything from the talent we have in house. And you know, the reality as you build businesses, not everybody lasts, right?
Mhm.
And you always have to be looking at your talent and making sure your team is the strongest. You know, if you're building a healthy, lean business and focusing on things like profitability, then it starts with your employees, right? You know, you've got to have the strongest employees. You've got to have people that work hard, that believe in the cause, that show up and can move the needle forward. And you've also got to very much honor and value and take care of those people and show them a path for career growth, because that's what all of us want, right? We all want to do better for ourselves, for our families, to get ahead in life. And so when you can create an environment that gives your employees that, that's a really powerful thing to accomplish, both as an entrepreneur but also as a company. And I really believe that's how the magic at a Golden State is really created every single day.
One thing that I'm impressed by is the profitability, but then also the commitment to sustainability. What is your approach? Because a lot of people in this industry and many other industries like to kind of talk the talk when it comes to sustainability, but not necessarily walk the walk. But you guys are. Can you tell me how you made a commitment to sustainability and employed that throughout your company?
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's important to note that everything we do comes from a very authentic place, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, we talked about my partner Rob and the fact that he's been cultivating and winning awards for 15 plus years. You know, he created Zookies, which was considered to be a high times top 10 strain internationally, you know? So I've been a cannabis connoisseur for a very long time, you know, 20 plus years now. So we're authentically creating products for ourselves and we're building a business based off the value system we embody. And so Rob is an avid fly fisherman. I mean, avid fly fisherman. I'm an obsessed skier, you know, mountaineering, big mountain skiing. So we have a passion and a dedication for, you know, fighting climate change. We believe in protecting the environment. We believe in protecting our scarce resources, you know, and we both believe that cannabis is something that's, intrinsically positive and beautiful. The plant, the movement, it's always represented doing good, making positive change. And so we believed from day one that we could build a company that embodied all of that, was producing the very best cannabis, because that's the only stuff we want to put into our body. And if we're not willing to put in the products we create, then what are we really doing? And at the same time, we could be doing real good. All of this is it's all able to be accomplished. And when I study guys like Jan Schnard at Patagonia, I see that they've been doing it. They've been doing this for decades, and they've been doing it at a scale that's so much bigger than ours. And if you read his book, he tells you we were able to do it and be profitable and be privately held and uphold product quality. So for me, it was a simple question: if they can do it, why can't we? It's just a function of, are we going to dedicate the time to making this happen and figuring it out? And if it's important to us, then we should. And that's kind of what's led us to where we are today, where, all the grows are run by sustainable energy, all hydroelectric. Actually, we're 100% carbon neutral. Every single company that we own is carbon neutral. All of our packaging is recycled ocean glass, FSC, SCI, FSC certified. So these are things that we've jumped on board with many years ago, and we've stayed committed to them. And then every year we challenge ourselves to do better and continue to hold ourselves accountable.
I want to get more into the sustainability, but one of the things that you said regarding being a connoisseur and the multiple award-winning strains. So what is the experience like when you're trying one of your strains for the first time and you're like, oh, I think we might have it here?
It's literally the most fun part of the job. It's funny you ask. I posted something on Instagram last week around Thanksgiving that was literally like me trying like 30 different phenotypes at home, literally just saying that this was the best job. And it's so fun, right? Because like I'm fortunate to have such a tremendous cultivation team, breeders, propagators, and they're just pumping out incredible genetics. And we try them and we understand the market and terpenes and what consumers want. And, when you have that voila, that eureka moment, it's special. You're like, this is a winner. Like, this is something really, really special. The high is incredible. The flavor profile is incredible. The bud structure is tremendous. And then we know we want to put it into a golden state, or does it go into one of our other brands, or, does it go into our white label program? So everything we do from a cannabis centric perspective is very, very intentional. And if it's not, a 90 point or better, you're never going to see it in the market from us.
What are some of those consumer trends that you're seeing right now? And as new product lines sort of come out and are popular, whether it be, vapes popping up or edibles popping up, how do you adjust accordingly to either capitalize on those or stay in your lane?
Yeah. Trends I'm seeing, people are talking a lot about OGs right now. You're definitely seeing a velocity and a focus on OG strains. You're seeing fruit forward citrusy sativas in some of the more rec centric markets, definitely in LA. I do believe we're still seeing a lot of pressure from the retailers for these high 30% THCs and stuff. But I do think you're starting to see consumers realize that that's not exactly what they want, and that they are in fact favoring lower percent THCs. But I do think that this is a very slow evolution, because you're basically saying that the consumer has to have confidence and conviction in what they want, which might differ from what is being pushed at a retail level, right? But those are some trends I'm seeing. I'm also seeing an uptick in vapes and non-combustion products, edibles and solventless vapes and things, where we saw a dip in extracted product for a while with VapeGate, but I'm starting to see that come up. And we don't jump on the bandwagon for trend. We focus. Our starting ingredient is whole flower, single source, single batch. That's what we're known for. It's the best in the state. And then every subsequent SKU we create, whether it's solventless vaporizers, a vegan edible, whatever, it all starts with that AAA indoor whole flower. And then we decide, is there, the appropriate, channel for it to go into something else? And what is that SKU, and does that SKU fit with the vision and the mission of the brand? So something like a solventless vaporizer, it does, because it's just giving our consumer base a different way to consume. And it's also giving accessibility to consumers who don't want to combust, but prioritize quality, premium, solventless, whole flower, single source, small batch.
Getting back into the sustainability, how did you become the first certified carbon neutral growing operation in California? Did it start that way, or was it a transition?
No, it honestly started by like me really going too deep into Patagonia and just convincing myself that this is something I wanted to do. It was important to the company. It was important to my co-founders. I was motivated and inspired by Patagonia. If they could do it, I wanted to do it. I believe there was no reason why we couldn't do it. And then I just worked closely with my team in LA and we figured out how to do it, and we partnered with an organization, a think tank that helps corporations achieve carbon neutrality. And so we worked very close with them over 2 years. We didn't do every company all at once. We started with the cultivations, we accomplished that. And then we worked on company by company to get to the point where every single company was now carbon neutral.
What what concessions, if any, did you have to make in order to be carbon neutral?
So there were certain, things to consider are like, how are you transporting your product, your carbon emissions, packaging choices you're using, how are you traveling across the country, how many employees do you have at certain sites, because all this leads to a certain carbon offset, right? Or carbon emission. So the more you can limit your emission, the less offset or revisions you need to make in your business. So we actually found out that we're pretty lean and we actually were not producing a tremendous amount of carbon emission to begin with. But keep in mind, we were leveraging from the get-go a sustainable energy infrastructure. That really put us ahead of the curve and allowed us to, mitigate the remaining carbon emission, I won't say easily, but it wasn't as big of a exercise as if we were using, traditional power sources per se.
Some of that sustainable energy infrastructure, how do you run cultivation on 100% hydroelectric power?
So again, knowing the background that we have in development, cultivation, and understanding all of these things, we obviously understood at a very granular level how important power was and how important it was to manage the cost of power, right? Because at the end of the day, this market is going to do this. It's going to have its ups and downs. You're going to have the dropping of a floor, as you see now in California. So one input we wanted to control was power. So we decided to invest and develop in a part of the state that was able to utilize hydroelectric power. In our area, we're leveraging the Shasta Dam, which is actually the second biggest hydroelectric infrastructure in the West Coast. And so that allowed us to leverage this infrastructure point and then harness the power coming out of the dam.
You also mentioned recycled packaging materials. Did you say they're from ocean glass?
Yes. So we started with just FSC, 80% recycled. And then, like I said, it's a constant evolution. This year, we actually converted, and now Golden State is using entirely recycled ocean glass and ocean plastics. And so, again, it's not easy because when you change your jar, you have to change your box, you have to change your hip labels, and there's a cost associated with this. And you're messing with supply chain and vendors during a pandemic when there's things are already strained, right? So nothing is as simple as a snap of the fingers, let's just do it. We now have a shorter, wider jar versus before we had a taller, more narrow jar that fits differently in the box. The box needed to be changed. So, these are things that we're committed to doing, and we're always holding ourselves accountable and trying to become a better and better company. And so this year we dedicated ourselves to changing the jars and everything that came with that. And there was a cost, and we went forward with it.
Talking to some of the packagers at MJ Biz, it seems like of all the industries, is the cannabis consumer more receptive of an increased price point if they do believe in sort of the sustainability model of the manufacturer or the producer?
I think it's a very loaded question because I think it's very hard to generalize the trend of the cannabis consumer. I think
Okay.
if we were going to look at the overall majority of the cannabis consumer, I would argue that they're not, and they're actually quite price sensitive in today's market. And I think we're seeing people, we're in a high inflationary period, right? Especially in
Yeah.
California, gas prices and grocery prices and all these things. I do think people are going to dispensaries and they're starting to reevaluate what product they're buying, and that is being driven by price point and volume at a certain price point. But I do think at the premium category where disposable income might be more accessible and people are a little less price sensitive, then I do think you will find your audience is there where people will invest more in the things you just talked about. But I don't think that's reflective of the greater audience.
Okay. You had mentioned an
And I
interest.
second
Oh,
that.
go
I
ahead.
second that because actually, sorry, because if you think about it in other industries, right, we're seeing CPG products raise their prices and no
Yeah.
people complain, but we're all buying groceries. We're all buying this. We're like, airline tickets are so expensive, da 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 da. But we're doing it. And we understand why these brands are doing this. And it stinks. In cannabis, you don't see brands increasing their prices now because we're in an inflationary period.
But I read recently that because I've definitely changed my habits at the grocery store as a result of inflation. It's, it forces the issue. But I was reading about how cannabis might be similar to alcohol, more recession proof than regular CPG companies. Do you believe that?
I entirely believe that it's recession resilient. I wouldn't say it's recession proof because I do believe, again, like we just talked about, people will make changes in terms of what they're buying, brand, etc., to try to squeeze out the extra dollars. And if they can save 5 or 10, they might make that decision. But I agree in the statement that cannabis users will continue to buy cannabis despite what's happening in the economy, right? Um, but recession proof, I don't think so.
Um, you're also committed to social justice and social equity campaigns. What do you do on what does Satya and some of your companies do in order to push that agenda forward?
Yeah, so the cool thing is we're minority owned.
Hmm.
That in itself is something that's I think incredibly special. To be minority owned, privately held, considered to be some of the best, if not the best, cannabis that's being produced in the country. Because there's not three of us, right?
Hmm.
And so again, just like the climate change and sustainability, these are missions that are authentic to us as individuals, our own life stories, the things we've experienced. And then now we have a platform to make change, right? And we believe this is what the plant, this is what the movement represents. And it's our social responsibility to use our platform to make these changes. And so things we've done, 3% of our revenue historically has gone to support the ACLU. The majority of our management team is female. During the height of the pandemic, we were giving anywhere between 5 to 10% of our revenue to support, community hospitals in minority areas that were, generally disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So that was monetary donations, PPE. We've done expungement clinics. We've done campaigns to combat voter suppression. As we pursue opportunities in other states, we've worked and partnered with organizations that help, rehabilitated convicts and felons enter the workforce through training campaigns, education campaigns to get them into finding jobs in the cannabis industry. Not necessarily where it equates to a license, but HVAC, security, retail operations. There's so many jobs that these individuals can have as legalization continues to grow. And so we want to act as a conduit to help them find jobs in the industry and within our own companies.
I mean, having heard everything that you're doing, the 100-hour work week must have seemed like you must long for the 100-hour work week because it seems like you're putting in so much more time.
It's so funny you said that. I literally said that this morning as I was just like hyper stressed and just, the world was falling apart. And, at 6 a.m., everything was great. And by 7:30, I was in like 5 different fire drills, chaos. that's just the nature of the beast. This industry is not for the faint of heart. It very much is a nascent industry where we're forging our way forward. It's the Wild West. You've seen some of the hardships California is facing this year. So it is very up and down, and it's going to continue to be like this for many, many years forward. We still don't have basic protection, safe banking, 280E tax, all of these things, right? Capital markets are drier than they've been historically. So I think you're right. Like, this is a dynamic, complex work environment, regardless of what your position is. You have to love what you do. You have to want to be in this industry, whether you're a business owner, social media person, a cultivator, it doesn't matter. There's easier jobs and easier industries out there. This industry is beautiful for all the things you and I have talked about. And I do think the opportunity and the upside in the long run is going to be unmatched because we are creating an industry from nothing, but it's going to be hard fought for many more years to come. This isn't the easiest day job, if you want to call it that.
How do you manage the volatility in California as you look to scale nationally?
Discipline, right? It's discipline. It's the things we talked about, right? It's focus. It's staying in your lane. We intentionally never went public, right? We knew there was a lot of bad valuations and companies that shouldn't be public going public, and we saw the fact that that's going to negatively impact us if we go public, right? So we never wanted to have that exposure. We have a small ownership team that makes all the decisions, and that allows us to stay true to what we're doing. And amidst the turmoil in California, we've been able to inch forward, right? We're growing. We've never laid off a person. We're building a third facility. We're sold out. We've never decreased our prices over the years. That's a testament to the quality, the brand, the management decisions we've made. We haven't raised a lot of money, so we're not beholden to anybody. And again, it all comes back down, in my opinion, to discipline.
What markets do you have your eyes on going forward?
Yeah. So again, I think that a Golden State embodies what is craft, right? This is small batch artisanal cannabis. It's the most exotic genetics, high price points. We talked about all the touch points that go into a Golden State, like the snow melt water, proprietary genetics, whole flower. We don't negotiate on price. So this is connoisseur level cannabis for people that want the best. And then, hopefully also align with all these other amazing things we do as a brand, right? The social justice, the sustainability, the minority owned. We need to go to markets that have this demographic. So to me, these are the top 10 markets: the New Yorks, the New Jersey, the Florida, the Illinois, places where people, again, they're not price sensitive. They've got disposable income, and they've got the consumer taste to say, I'm putting this in my body. I am investing in my experience. I want the best experience. Just like if you or I went to a cocktail bar, I highly doubt either of us would be like, hey, give me your rail alcohol for my cocktail.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. Or if you or I go to a dinner, we're probably going to make a decision to go to at least a decent dinner,
Yeah.
like decent quality food. So it's analogous to that, right? We're never going to be the biggest. We're never going to be the largest cultivator. That's not what gives you quality. So this business is craft. We now need to be in the states that have the demographics that are aligned and believe in craft.
I mean, if we're asking for the rail, things have gone far, far out of control. Did you have a chance to go to MJ Biz? Were you in Vegas?
I did. It was amazing. I didn't get to go last year. My wife was pregnant and the pandemic and stuff. So myself and my two partners, Rob and Simone, were there. Rob spent a lot of time at the convention looking at, what was happening from like an innovation mechanical perspective. We were taking a lot of meetings with, operators within California, trying to find opportunities in new markets. Overall, I thought it was a great event. Everybody I wanted to see was there. The energy was there. And for us, it was very productive.
How did you get into mountaineering?
So I think it's just I grew up skiing. I grew up ski racing, and I think people who know me would say that I'm a pretty intense person, for better or worse. And so I'm pursuing the challenge. And so it was just an evolution of my skill set and wanting to continue to raise the bar and push the envelope, no different in business. And I think that for me, it really expanded my mind and taught me that, like, when you're in these really, really challenging situations where it's you, your body, your mind versus something that's so much bigger than you have to persevere. Like, you have to control stress and fear and uncertainty and discomfort, and you have to empower yourself, the gifts you were given, to find success. And so as I became more and more entrepreneurial, the parallels were just uncanny, right? And so a lot of these things that I gain and I take from mountaineering, it allows me to be a good CEO. I don't falter under stress. I I push my brain, my body. I invest in myself. I invest in my team. And like we talked about, when things are like this, that's just a part of the ride. You don't shy away from that. That's the adrenaline. The adrenaline is figuring it out and winning and finding success.
Before we get out of here, and I really appreciate your time. You've been very generous with your time. Is there anything else you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience knows about either yourself or your companies?
I think it's just that, we're authentic to the craft. Like I said, we started in this industry 15, 20 years ago. We've been in it for a long time. We've been winning awards long before legalization happened. All of our genetics are proprietary, and every single thing we do comes from a very authentic place. The investment in sustainability, the small batch, the snow melt water, that's what you get from us. We don't cut corners. We're fair, and we use all of our own products. So people are investing in that elevated experience for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really powerful. And I leave it on the fact that, all cannabis is not created equal, just like any other consumer product good. And so if you're really investing in your experience, whether it's recreational or medicinal, why are you not investing in the best experience? This is plant medicine you're putting into your body. Why not pursue the best?
We didn't have an opportunity to really talk about it. You've mentioned it a couple of times. Do you use only water that is melted snow, right?
Yeah, it's all snow melt water that comes from Mount Shasta. It travels over several miles of volcanic rock into the Shasta Reservoir, and then we pump directly from the Shasta Reservoir into our cultivations at 44 degrees, no reverse osmosis, no purification. I would argue this is some of, if not the cleanest water in the state. And that's what's interacting with our plants. So our plants are getting this like mineral enriched, amazing snow melt water. And you see it in the bud structure. You see it in the crystallization. You see it in the colors. And it's a simple thing, right? Like, at the end of the day, this is agriculture. And what are the most important parts of agriculture? Light, water, nutrients, right? So if we control these things and we have the best inputs of that, then we can actually consistently produce the best cannabis. That is what we do. And when you have dirty water and you have to use RO and, purification, you're inevitably stripping out the good too, right? Just to get to a water that is the right amount of, ppm. For us, we don't need to do that. So there's this positive interaction between the snow melt water and our plants.
Well, once again, thank you very much for taking the time, Nishant. I really do appreciate having you on the podcast.
No, I appreciate it as well. This has been great. And if there's anything else, please reach out. Thank you so much for your time, David.
Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can email me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com. For Nishant Reddy, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.